And a federal judge has dismissed a lawsuit demanding the removal of the words "In God We Trust" from all U.S. currency. The lawsuit was brought against the Treasury Department by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. In the initial complaint, filed back in February, the group, along with a dozen more plaintiffs, argued that having a phrase like "In God We Trust" on currency is, quote, proselytizing, discriminatory, and a per se establishment of monotheism. The group argued that the use of the motto does not exhibit a separation of church and state. However, the judge presiding over the case was not persuaded by these arguments, and in the court order, he wrote that the phrase was not a violation because the Supreme Court has, quote, repeatedly assumed the motto's secular purpose and effect. Now, to discuss this more, I'm joined by Michael Newdow, who identifies as an atheist and was the lead counsel in the case. Michael, thank you so much for joining me. Let's start off with why you think having the phrase "In God We Trust" on currency is problematic.
Well, I don't see how anyone could think it's anything but. I mean, it says "In God We Trust." That's a religious statement, and it doesn't reflect the views of all Americans, and government's not supposed to be making religious statements.
Well, the plaintiffs on the case have argued that this violates the Constitution, but technically the Constitution doesn't mandate that church and state be separate. That wording comes from a Thomas Jefferson letter. So how does this violate the right to practice your religion?
Well, I mean, that argument that the Constitution doesn't say separation of church and state. The Constitution doesn't say a lot of things. We use phrases all the time. It doesn't say separation of powers, but we certainly live our tripartite government with a separation of powers. We have all sorts of things. People use shorthand phrases. The idea is that, well, the exact wording is Congress shall make no law respecting, which means having anything to do with an establishment of religion. And if you look at what the framers were talking about, they were talking about exactly things like this, where the government takes a view and advocates for that view and excludes other people.
And of course, the motto, "In God We Trust," is not just on currency. It's also written prominently in the chambers of the House of Representatives. So why focus, just on currency here?
Well, I mean, you need standing to bring a case. We don't have standing to challenge what Congress does unconstitutionally unless it personally affects us. It personally affects us to be carrying around money that says something completely contrary to our religious views. And, what would the Christians in our nation do if we said, "In Allah we trust, in God we don't trust"? What would Jews say? "In Jesus we trust"? What would Catholics say if in Protestant Christianity we trust, which was what our nation was founded on? All those people were Protestant Christians. Everybody would be upset at that, and I can't understand why people don't recognize that this is the exact same thing, only it excludes fewer people and unpopular people, and they're unpopular largely because the government keeps saying they should be unpopular. In God we trust.
Well, it seems like we have a culture in the United States of using religious phrasing, even if we're not necessarily religious. I know that many people often say, "Thank God," or "For heaven's sake." So how do you begin to address how, language has permeated our culture? Is there anything that you and people who are working to do the same work that you're doing, is there anything you're doing to tackle this?
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You're missing the key point here, which is that we have nothing against people, individuals, groups, people who are not the government doing what they choose in terms of religion. If they want to worship God, they have every right, and I would sit there and protect that right. What we're against is them using the government of us all, to do their religious bidding. That's what's impermissible. And so when government speaks in terms of religion, if government said there's no God, which is what we believe, that would be just as wrong. Government should stay out of this business. It's very simple.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, what other battles are you and other atheist organizations fighting at this point to separate church and state? I just want to get an idea of what other types of initiatives that you have.
Well, it's just any time the government is getting involved. There's a case right now in Massachusetts where they're trying to get God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. We take little children, say, put your hand over your heart and say there's a God. That's a pure religious statement. And when the government does that, that's impermissible. Again, remember, it's the government, not individuals. Individuals can do that all they want. If kids want to meet before school and pledge allegiance to Jesus Christ, get on their knees, they have every right to do that, and they're protected in doing that. You just can't get the government to do it. So there's that one. We have our passport. It's all filled with God stuff. stuff. We have, if you want to be a naturalized citizen, you have to say, "So help me God." We have this permeating our society. It's unnecessary and it's wrong and it's unconstitutional. More importantly.
And are you coming up against any roadblocks? If so, what kind of roadblocks?
Yeah, we're coming up against judges who choose not to uphold the Constitution's principles and would rather, protect their careers or avoid the controversy that undoubtedly will result from a case like this. That's the roadblock. We need to find judges who think. God.
I'm sorry. As I understand it, you are planning to appeal this case. Are there any new strategies that you're hoping to employ the second time around?
No, I'm hoping to well, it's the same strategy. It's getting the judge to acknowledge. I mean, I don't think anybody honestly believes that this is not a violation of the Constitution. I mean, it says, "In God we trust." I mean, government is not. The judge in this case, there's what's called the purpose prong of the Lemon test, which says government cannot have a religious purpose. The purpose, as stated by the director of the Mint, when this was first put on the coins and currency, said this is in the official Mint director's report. Right? He says, "We claim to be a Christian nation. Our national coinage should declare our trust in God, in Him who is King of Kings and Lord of Lords." That's Jesus Christ. Now, if you're going to argue that wasn't done for a religious purpose, when the director of the Mint tells you that's what it's done for, I mean, if that's the sort of judicial opinion you're going to get, there's nothing much I can do strategically. Hopefully, I can find two judges in the Court of Appeals who are going to say this is ridiculous. It's not even a close case, and we're going to uphold the Constitution. And the Supreme Court's never ruled on this, and give the Supreme Court a chance to see if they're going to uphold the rights of all Americans, including atheists. Well,
Michael, we're definitely going to follow the appeal. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight on this case, and we wish you all the luck. That
Thank you very much.
Michael Newdow, a lead counsel in this case.